A year prior to that, I had a gun to my head, thinking that was a reasonable solution. And today, I am so happy that people can't even believe it. That's not something to be angry about.
That's transformation.
That's gratitude.
That's gratitude. Welcome to the Focal Flip Podcast. Every week we take a deep dive into the mystery and stigma behind mental health and explore real-life stories of struggle and triumph. We aim to educate and encourage others as we bring together a diverse group of guests. From the streets to sanctuaries, classrooms to boardrooms, mental health does not discriminate, neither do we. Prepare to laugh, prepare to cry, prepare to be changed. Let's get into it. All right, hey everybody. Welcome back to the Focal Flip Podcast. Running it back with my boy John. I'm stoked for this one. You're going to hear me say stoked a ton in all my episodes. It's one of my favorite words. Today, what we're going to talk about and what John is going to talk about is we went into kind of like the suffering, the alcoholism, the addiction, and just kind of being trapped in our own head and just all these different thoughts and everything that we had. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about moving forward was there's so many ways that this whole monster can go when it comes to mental health, alcoholism, addiction. So what we're trying to do here at Focal Flip is really nail down to the specifics and make that piece normal. So today's discussion and today's conversation is going to really be over the origin of thought. And I'm a little nervous. I'm a little nervous because it's so deep. But I know that we have, the correct person on here to be able to explain it because of actual experience and a ton of intellect, a lot of self-taught stuff, a lot of high intellectual individuals that has kind of sharpened this man here, John McNeely. You ready, dude?
I'm ready.
I love it. So let's talk about, let's get into the origin of thought. But I feel like before that, you had mentioned some stuff about like suffering, things like that. And so can we start with that? Because a lot of the things we're like kind of manufacturing our own stuff without really realizing it, but it gets deeper. So we got to start at the beginning.
Right.
So.
Well,
Hit me, man.
Like what we've talked about in previous episodes. I mean, we manufacture our own misery, and that misery comes in form of anger, guilt, shame, remorse, self-pity, and for me personally, and for many of the people I talk to, they wallow in it. You get in your head and you just wallow. And, the main issue is our own suffering. So what are the origins of suffering? Well, it's thought. It's our thinking that creates our suffering, and so the origins of thought and understanding thought is a critical piece of the puzzle. When we have a thought, we believe it's our own, right? Yeah. And we react to that thought.
Correct.
But what are the origins of thought? Where does it come from?
Well, let's
find out.
Teach me, man. Teach me. I'm at a phase in my life where I just like to hone in and learn on everything and find parallels and stuff, and it's just super cool. So, man, without further ado, please start.
Well, the first thing we need to understand is the difference between the conscious and the unconscious mind. 95% of all brain function is unconscious. So when you look at everything that we're aware of within the conscious mind is really a very small piece of a very intricate puzzle. Okay. But that's all we're aware of is our consciousness, our mind, what we're aware of. That's it.
Okay, well, explain unconscious then, because if 95% of that's coming unconscious, explain to folks what unconscious means. Well, unconscious is.
It's just
technically.
It's just as it sounds. It's functions of the psyche that are beneath our conscious awareness.
Okay.
Going to the most basic things, the controlling of the heart and your breathing, and these are things that you're not aware of, but that the brain is actively controlling and regulating.
Okay, so those are examples of unconscious.
The deep, very deep unconscious. But the unconscious mind, the personal unconscious, and what that means is that everything that we've experienced, everything that we've thought, everything that we've ever felt, it's all there. So when a thought arises, it goes through this loop, and it goes through basically all the different aspects of the mind. It's the instincts, the learned moralities, personal experiences, core beliefs, and that's a big one. Core beliefs. We'll touch on that more. But all of these things, it goes through our traumas. It goes through our fears. It goes through our delusions. And it goes through this loop before as it forms. And when it forms, we become aware of it in a sudden flash of thought. But we have no idea what's influencing or creating that thought.
Wow.
Now, this is important because for most people, they have a thought and they believe it's theirs. And that thought may make them angry. It may make them wallow in self-pity. It may cause all of these emotions and all these different levels of suffering, and we have absolutely no idea what their origins are.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's an overwhelming one, because
That's big.
Basically, Carl Jung, who's one of my favorite psychologists, he's the father of modern psychology. One of his quotes is that the conscious mind allows itself to be trained like a parrot, but the unconscious does not.
Yeah.
So our conscious mind is basically parroting anything and everything the unconscious tells it, whether it harms us or not. And then if you want to go even deeper, the ego, with its defense mechanisms of self-justification, defend that thought, even to the point of if it leads you on a path that kills you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dude, let me take a second to breathe. That's so much.
That's a lot.
I mean, you tied that ego piece in there. I can kind of understand what you're saying. You explained it fairly well. That whole shock piece was extremely interesting. So my takeaways from that is kind of like, conditions, belief systems, and kind of those things. And as you're a child and stuff growing up, just based on your own experiences, you're making your own assumptions of things.
Well, it's all, it's
based
all
on how your brain's growing at those younger levels. Up,
It's a very complex, and the mind is conditioned, and how it thinks is conditioned. And if you start throwing in traumas and fears and all of these things, it controls how you reactively think for the rest of your life.
So that's what kind of that starts contributing to the chaos.
And if your ego is defending that thinking, you're on a path. You're a victim of your own mind, and you're basically in a prison of your own mind. And the hardest prison to escape from is one you don't know you're in.
Yeah. You were touching on that in the last episode too. Was just the fact that you were just not comfortable with yourself.
Absolutely.
You couldn't connect with people.
All rooted in fears that I couldn't see.
Yeah, and it's interesting how all of that goes into play. Because when I first met you, I didn't understand really much about psychology. Right. I didn't understand much about psychiatry. I didn't understand much about the brain, how it operates, what's happening when it's an active addiction, with alcoholism, with other different, diagnosed mental illnesses. But the thing that was so interesting to me was just when we started to look at conscious, unconscious, subconscious. And that was fascinating. Yeah. And it was fascinating for me because I was at a point in my recovery journey where I wanted to lean in on things, and I would compartmentalize things. And so when it got down to the mind, and I'm getting healthy after my relapse, and I'm getting healthy, the next thing you know, I'm able to start kind of section things off. And interesting because I never understood what it was like. I could say, yeah, he's conscious about this, or he's knocked him unconscious. Like those were what my assumptions were. Today I'm 39 years old.
Right.
Now it's so intricate.
Right. It's fascinating.
It is. It is. And you all are going to see this in this episode because I'm still trying to gather my thoughts as we discuss this. But the interesting thing that I take away from that, you bring the ego in on that. And I feel like that's where the covering up starts.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you feel like you have all those things that are conditioning up into you, right? And no matter what. And so you have those outlooks, perspectives, all those things, right?
The problem with the ego is that the ego is the center of consciousness, right? And it can see its own contents, but it can't see the contents of the unconscious or the effect it has on consciousness.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's blind to it.
Sure.
Instead, any thought, feeling, emotion it has, it believes it's true, it's valid, and it defends it. I have a right to be angry. I have a right, even if it's rooted in delusion or fear.
Yeah.
It doesn't see that. It sees it as true.
What do we do with that? What do we do with that? Tell us. What do we do with that?
There's only one thing you can do. You have to dive within yourself. And, Rumi, who was a 12th century, philosopher and Sufi mystic, he said, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. So while we've been conditioned our whole lives to run from our pain and avoid our pain and push it down and not think about it, and that's the path to finding all those delusional beliefs, irrational fears, and conditioned thought processes, diving into the pain and finding the root causes and conditions.
Yes. I know for a fact because I've experienced that.
Yeah.
And it's incredible when you do that.
It is.
But that is extremely scary for people when it comes down to having to maybe necessarily expose their thoughts. But it's also a piece where all of those thoughts manufactured your own misery. Mm-hmm. And, I pictured myself like a ball. Mm-hmm. Every single time something would come that just gave me kind of anxiety and depression and stuff, I would either just avoid it with it, or I would take it on and maybe check it to the most minimal box.
I would run from it.
Yeah, that's my version of running from it, was stacking them on.
Yeah.
Like for you, you're running away from the problems. For me, I'm running away from them, but I'm adding them on.
Absolutely.
And
you're running away from your problems and creating more on the way.
Yeah. And then the next thing you know, you're completely full of fear.
Yeah.
Delusions, stuff that doesn't even, we find in hindsight, doesn't really come true.
Right.
And here it was all this time we faced on fears and all these different things.
Here's why this is so beautiful, though. You said this is beautiful, and it really is. And here's why. When you dive deep within yourself and find the origins of your pain and suffering, you also find the key to your peace and happiness, because they're both woven from the same cloth and by the same weaver, your thoughts.
Okay, so I'm gonna pound right into this then. Okay, so if that's the case, we get into the origin of thought. How do we start to dissect our thoughts and keep our emotions and our pride in check? How do we, we have all these thoughts. What's the first thing that somebody who's stuck in the madness that has a desire to quit, like what's the first thing to do? Because we all know it takes inner work. But that's so hard for people to do, man.
I could give you an example.
It's hard for people to do.
One of the first things I had to work through in early sobriety was my issues with people.
Right.
I just disliked people. I was constantly in conflict with people. Someone would say something to me that I would perceive as being offensive. and I would harbor this resentment against this person. And every time they'd walk into a room, I would just bristle. And I would lay awake at night and think about what they said that offended me and what I should have said in return and what I'm going to say.
Yeah, I did those things
just
too.
in my head.
Yeah.
People in my head.
Yeah.
And so I had to start working through that, because I was still in conflict and having issues with people. And so I started to peel the onion on that, diving into those disturbances. And the first thing I encountered was my ego. Why do people disturb you? Well, because people are stupid and they're ignorant. And on and on and on.
Yeah, them.
Blaming people.
Yeah.
But no, anything that disturbs me originates in me. So you have to move past the ego and dive deeper.
Yeah,
so
that's cool.
When did I start having problems with people? That's the next question.
Yeah. Thank you.
My God, my whole life. It's my whole life I've had problems with people.
Okay.
Why? When did it start? Well, man, I was 7, 8 years old. And I was having, and the more I dug, just to make this long story short, took a lot of inner work. But the end result is what I realized is that and we talked about this before, as an early child or a young child, I was full of fear and insecurity, and I couldn't connect with people.
Mm-hmm. Right.
A child can't process that. Why can't I connect with people? What's wrong with me? A child can't answer those questions. So instead, an ego defense mechanism is made. The problem's not me. The problem's people. People are stupid. People are ignorant. People are petty, And that protected me. But it led me on a path of conflict with people my entire life. So that early childhood defense mechanism controlled how I thought and how I reacted to people for a lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's how we have to dissect the things that irritate us and disturb us.
So let me ask you this. That's fantastic. It's extremely profound. And I love that deep dive and that inner work. The part that I'm kind of hanging on is when you started to dive deep. What I have found, and the folks and stuff that I coach or anything like that, is when you start to dive deep, you realize that it's difficult. But when I started to do that, I found resentments.
Sure.
I found some anger.
Sure.
And that was really hard for me because I thought I was getting healthy. And I'm looking back in, and I was still struggling with this pain of looking all the way in. Well, I don't know what it was. 33 days later, I'm back in a treatment facility.
Sure.
Way sick.
Yep.
It's just fascinating. Like, so how can, when you start to expose things, or you start to kind of learn about yourself and you want to turn things inward personally on yourself, how do we battle the emotions that start to present themselves to us when we're trying to do basically an inventory of your own life, And
you really touched on a difficult piece of the puzzle.
I know, this all is difficult. I know.
It's disassociating from your thoughts and emotions, because you have to do that before you can dive into the causes and conditions. You can't sit there and rage and try to figure those things out. You have to have calm discernment.
Yes, absolutely. Not a choice, discernment. That's my big thing.
And
we no longer choose, we discern.
I'll tell you another factor of this that really is a big piece of the puzzle, and that's perspective.
Come on, brother. You're in my wheelhouse on that too.
And I'll tell you how I first learned this lesson is I was in early recovery, and I was on what they call the pink cloud. I mean, I was just happy and enjoying my early sobriety compared to what I came from. It was pretty wonderful, you know. And so me and a buddy of mine, we would go into these 12-step meetings and just joke and be happy and enjoy life.
Yeah.
And this woman looked at me once and she said, "You're not that happy. You can't be that happy every day. You're hiding something." And I was like, no, I've been miserable my whole life. I want to be happy and enjoy life. And she looked me dead in the eye and she said, "No, that's a lie." And she walked away. And I'm like, my gosh, you know, what was that?
Yeah, what was that?
So I went and sat down in this meeting and I did.
Part of it doesn't surprise me.
I mean, I did what I've done my entire life. I started to wallow in it. I started to get into this obsessive,
You obsessed over it, didn't you?
obsessive thought cycle, and I started to magnify it.
Oh man.
You know, and I was even reading her mind. You know, well, she's just saying that because she's miserable and she resents my happiness. You know, and then I'm like, I mean, well, you know, she's just miserable. But she's saying my entire recovery is a lie. She's calling me a liar. She's saying, you know, and I just started to get enraged. And this went on for about 10 minutes, and I magnified it and magnified it and magnified it. And by the time I became consciously aware what was happening in my mind,
Yeah.
it was controlling me at that point. By the time I became aware, my fist was clenched,
Wow.
my knees bobbing like a sewing machine, and I am enraged.
All right.
So I had to stop. Wait a minute. I've learned that if anything's disturbing me, there's something wrong with me. So I stopped. I took a breath. And I said, what's another way I could look at this? And it's if the clouds opened up and the answer shined on me. A year prior to that, I had a gun to my head, thinking that was a reasonable solution. And today, I am so happy that people can't even believe it. That's not something to be angry about.
That's transformation.
That's gratitude.
That's gratitude.
And you know, at the end of the meeting, I walked up to her and I hugged her and I said, "Thank you. You gave me a lesson in gratitude today." And she looked at me like I was insane. But I walked out of that meeting with a spring of my step, being happy to be alive.
Yeah.
Now think about this. The exact same scenario. With one perspective, I was so enraged and I would have carried this resentment with her, and every time I saw her, I would bristle, maybe so much that I never came back. With a different perspective, I was full of gratitude.
Yeah.
The same exact scenario, two different perspectives with two wildly different state of minds resulting from it.
Wow, that was so well explained.
You know?
Thank you for explaining that. I can imagine.
Now here's the thing. There are 1,000 ways to look at things.
Yeah, there's a bunch.
We choose one. We believe it. We call it the truth. We close the door on the other 999 options, and then we manufacture our own misery with our own chosen perspectives.
Wow. And we just knock one of these mics over for the mic drop.
Man, I mean, and once you realize that, once that comes into focus, why would you ever choose to suffer again?
Yeah, I know.
You know what I
Dude,
mean?
I did too. And I will never want to suffer again, ever again, because now I'm experiencing joy.
Because all you have to do is change the way you look at things.
It is. It's so awesome. And that's what, I know we're kind of like easing into it with these episodes, and this is kind of our bread and butter, everybody. The reason why it's called Focal Flip, the reason why this whole thing is just this inward look. And we're basically revolutionizing kind of the way that we talk about it, make it normalizing getting treatment, destigmatizing mental health, understanding alcoholism, addiction, different mental illnesses, all those things. So we turn this thing back in, and it's not as difficult as it seems. It's not. And it can be at first, but there's a lot of really great human beings that are out there that will teach you and open you up to so much, man. And now, for me, I'm experiencing joy completely. And I've had happiness.
Bliss.
I've had happiness And now I have joy.
Yeah. And then throw in inner peace and just
yeah. And we were gonna we were gonna that inner peace.
That is the treasure of treasures.
Living with that harmony. And that's where at the end of the first episode that we did, we were kind of leaning in towards the soul and spirituality.
Yeah.
And that's that was something that changed for me. That the thought process for me was what changed.
Right.
The focal flip piece was all on perspective.
Right.
You know, I was using somebody. This is me basically interviewing you, but I'll just tell you this as an example. I was coaching somebody, and they were talking about things that they were disturbed about, right? And so we're kind of diving in and dissecting some of the things that they're disturbed about. And in doing that, went back, talked about some of this stuff. Now, let me tell you how many different perspectives based on what you had just said about how we take 1,000 different things, or 990, we believe one, 999, we manufacture our own misery, we create our own thing, and we believe it and we run with it. Perspective change is monumental. It creates empathy, it creates compassion, it creates a much better understanding of people just in general. That perspective flip back in will end up teaching you so much that you'll understand that if you're in a situation like this person I'm talking about, their specific instance was being in a vehicle, and they got super upset that somebody cut them off. Do we deal with this stuff all the time, right? I mean, it's just us and as humans, we're out driving. People annoy us, they frustrate us, piss us off, whatever you want to call it. But here's the thing. So take a situation like this and the way that John has explained everything in this podcast episode. So let's say this said person is in their vehicle, and then the person in front of them cuts them off and they slam their brakes at a stoplight. Now, would you be upset? Yeah, naturally I'd react, be upset. It's frustrating. You messed that up. I didn't want to wreck my car. There was this fear. There's all these different things that you can think about. And next thing you know, you're annoyed, you're frustrated about it, and you're allowing it to affect your day.
Absolutely.
Now, when you look back at a situation like that, if you were to pause it in that moment, okay? If you were to pause it in that moment, there's so many outside influences. That car cut you off, okay? Thank goodness you didn't wreck into them, but what's that person in that car in front of you going through that day? Right. Thank goodness that car behind you didn't hit you.
Right.
What's the sunlight look like? The stops?
It didn't happen.
There's other cars. There's trucks coming through. Yeah. There's all these different things. But here you are. We're upset.
You see,
because of everybody else.
We perceive as things happening to us personally, and they're not. They're just happening.
They just happen. Life.
Yeah.
Life just happens. Some of us, it's more difficult, and we all come from different things, but it's life.
Right.
It's mixed into this thing together. For such a complex episode, you did a good job explaining it. I felt your passion.
Yeah, you experience something like this, and it radically alters your life. It's hard not to be passionate about it.
Absolutely, man. It changes your life completely. Right. Completely. I'll end with this for everybody because I love to end on we're going to have so much crazy positivity. I'll tell you how much mental clarity that I have today. Whenever I have a thought come in my mind at any time, I can literally check it at the door. Mm-hmm. I can check it at the door. And in business or in other things, what I would call vet that thought, I'd be vetting it, and at that point in the past, I would make a bad choice or a poor choice. Right. Now I have discernment, and it's all the way dive down to the specific thought.
Right.
I would have never learned it if I didn't start coming to treatment and come. Actually, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't have learned it if I didn't come back.
Right. Yeah.
You guys said, "Hey, keep coming back. We want what we have. We got to do what we do. Keep coming back." Eventually, I did.
You said something.
But man, the perspective changed from all the people that were around and the intellect. It's mind blowing.
When I said in the previous episode that it changes how you perceive reality itself, that sounds kind of grandiose, but it's pretty accurate. It radically changes everything. You said something when you were when you were talking, you said how something can ruin your whole day. And when people come up to me and they tell me they've had a really bad day, my question is, did you have a bad day, or did you have a bad 5 minutes that you wallowed in all day? And I already know the answer.
Yeah. The mind's a wonderful thing, man.
Yes, it is.
And it's
especially if you can harness it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm excited for everybody to get healthy and start learning that, because I think that's one of the things that I learned for me personally in my personal and professional walk, was the amount of mental clarity that I got through program work and spirituality. It kind of stripped me down to where I no longer had all those things covered up anymore. And at that point, I had a fresh beginning mentally. And that really started and kind of launched me into a new level of growth and understanding and love, acceptance, tolerance. You know, I've been able to find joy through my faith and my friends, everything around it. It's just, that's why Focal Flip exists.
Right.
Because we want people to experience that.
Yeah.
I want people to experience that. You know, so many things. I think the next episode we're going to go into, we'll get into spirituality and the soul and everything, because that's a pretty complex episode.
It is.
It can be, because a lot of people don't like religion or all this other,
It's very personal.
Yeah, and some people they have their own little belief systems and stuff. We're going to show how we all can work together, and kind of see how it goes. But for the next episode, if you're cool with it, number one, first, thank you again.
My pleasure.
For just being authentic. Number one.
As you can tell, I'm talking my passions.
Yeah, and that's what we want. That's everything. It's just genuine. It's coming out.
Right.
Nobody's perfect at anything. Like, I'm trying to post a podcast, and I'm having brain farts left and right, and saying, "Hey, God, can you edit this thing?" And we're just doing life together.
Right,
One thing that we have learned is the mind, the soul, and life. And I'm telling you,
we're just walking each other home.
You walk it. It's no more talk it.
Yep.
It's a listen and a walk. And I'm so thankful for that, man. Yeah. You're a huge part of my journey, man. I wouldn't have my thoughts wouldn't have started to change if we didn't cross paths.
You're a huge part of mine.
Hey, man. I don't know how.
When one teaches to learn.
That's right. Dude, what's the thing about the pupil and teacher thing? Give me that. What was that quote?
When the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
I was the student, y'all. Yeah. I was the student.
You were ready.
Was I?
Were you not?
Ta-da! That's cool, man. I appreciate you. So the next episode that we're going to get into, I think it's time to start hopping in the stigmas, man. I really think you did a great job kind of navigating the origin of thought, and keeping it over there.
It's complex.
It is. It's really complex, and that's hard to do. Right. And for people with a higher intellect, that's pretty tough to do. Right. I thought you did a good job with that.
Thank you.
So you're a good dude. We'll keep spreading the message. Everybody, if you really like this episode, if you like the content, we're starting to build it up now. So you can go to Instagram at @focal_flip. Go to our Facebook page, Focal Flip. YouTube, Spotify, that will be dropped here soon. Fridays when our episodes typically come out. Try to subscribe. Do whatever you can, because we're trying to destigmatize this beast by showing how normal it can be. Mm-hmm. So, John, you have any parting words?
No, I think we've wrapped it.
Dude, I love it. Let's pop into some stigmas next week. Cool.
Sounds good.
All right. Okay, you ready to wrap this thing up?
If you like Focal Flip's videos, my dad's videos, go to YouTube, Spotify, and Apple, and like and subscribe to be updated.
I love it.